Hello guys, once again it's Matt and today we have another video. Thank you all the members, all the patrons. Make sure to subscribe and let's get into it, guys. I had to do a video about this. This is something that I've been asking for a very long time. They updated RWR. Let's talk a little bit about the features that they are adding it. It's amazing, guys. It really is an incredible thing. So first things first, we start with the individual frequency ranges. So basically now each aircraft will have its own frequency emitting radar. They already have that, but it will be specified what frequency that radar is producing. And you will be able to see what bands or what of those frequencies the RWR of the aircraft can actually, understand or listen to or detect, right? So they give, for example, some examples over here, but we can show in the game right now. So for example, we have the MiG-29 SMT, right? It produces on its radar the band I, so the letter I, right? And the RWR can detect from G to I. So if it's I, it can detect this radar. For example, the F-16C radar produces the band I as well. So if the MiG-29 actually can detect the I band on the RWR, it means that it can detect the F-16 radar. On the other hand, if the F-16C detects on its RWR from E to J, which includes the I in the middle, of course, I, J, right, in the alphabet, it means that it also detects the radar of the MiG-29, So this will be a common thing for every single of these aircraft. We can take, for example, the MiG-21 bis over here. It detects the letter, the band J, right? So it can actually detect the radar itself. So the radar of the MiG-29 as well, the F-16. The MiG-23, let's see, the J as well. The F-16 can detect it. I'm not sure that the MiG-29 can do that since the J is not there. So maybe the J cannot be detected. So maybe the MiG-29 cannot be detected by the MiG-23 cannot be detected by the MiG-29 and so on. You understand? So each of these aircraft will have its own radar frequencies and its own like RWR frequencies that can actually be detected. And if you take a look on here, many of these will depend on the situation. For example, the Su-7 can only detect the I band. So it means that any other band of radars, it will not be able to detect it. So MiG-23s, MiG-21s, for example, the Mirage can detect the MiG-23s and the MiG-29s, for example, and so on and so on. So each of these will have its own bands that it can detect and the bands that it cannot. Okay, that's pretty much how it works. But there is another thing, the tracking mode detection. So now not only you will be able to detect, obviously depending on the band, but each specific radar will have the ability to track or not the radar when it's actually locking you. So for example, a MiG-29 is locking an F-16. You will be able to have a track, basically detection alarm. So like here, for example, you will say just track because the MiG-29 is detecting you and tracking you, so it's actually locking you, okay? But not only that, some aircraft will not have that. So for example, the list of stations that have lost the ability to detect tracking mode. So basically the radars, the RWR, sorry, that will not be able to tell you that a radar is locking you. So the Mirage 3E, for example, will not be able to tell the pilot that it's being locked. The Su-7 with the SPO2, the JA-37, the F-4C, the A-4E, sorry, and the F-14A, the F-4J UK, all of these will not be able to tell you that you are being tracked by an air-to-air radar. I'm pretty sure. At least this is what they're actually saying it over here. Okay, so yeah, F-14 is an old RWR, so it makes sense. But not only that, remember, this depends on the modes that you are basically playing. So if you are playing in arcade, everything will work. But depending if you are on RB or SP, some things will change. For example, detection of Post-dopplers. So there are Post-doppler radars in the game. MiG-29s, F-16s, F-14s, F-4Js, all of those have Post-doppler radars, right? All of those radars depends if the RWR can or not detect them, so they can show to the pilot that they are being tracked by it or detected by it in a general sense. So there are some RWRs. Here are the list of the stations that don't have this ability. For example, the F-14 in simulator mode won't be able to actually see the Post-doppler signals. So it's a very old radar, so it makes sense, right? F4C, for example, SPO10, all the early 70s RWRs over here, they're basically like the Post-doppler radars will be invisible to these RWRs in simulator. Remember, in simulator. In RB, it will be normal, but just for you simulator players out there. For the F-14A, things are not looking quite that good. Radar tracking. So some of the things that they actually had, they basically, for these aircraft over here, the F-4E, F-16A, F-14B, ADV, and the Apaches, they basically are going to have kind of a memory, where the target is moving and stuff. So it's actually tracking the movement of the direction of the target instead of having the sectors and stuff. So that's something. And of course, target identification as well is something that will be implemented. So not only you will be able to see where the targets are, and they're more realistic because depending on the radar you can or not detect the target or not, that they're locking on you. You will be able to identify the target as well. So some aircraft, for example, will only be able to identify if you're getting tracked or not, or basically pinged or not, or trying to be detected, right? So these are the list of these aircraft. So the Su-7, the MiG-21 SMT, or any aircraft that uses the SPO-10 and the Saab A-32, these three RWRs, for example, and of course these are all subject to change. Okay, these are just some examples. All of these aircraft will not be able to identify what type of aircraft it's trying to detect you. Okay, so basically if it's an F-16 or anything like that, or from an F-16 to an F-4 to an F-14 or anything like that, it will just show as the same type of, or even an AA system, it will show as the same type of target. But then we have these ones, the target identification by lighting lamps. So these ones will try to identify what type of target are trying to detect you or lock you or everything like that, right? So the F4C, F4J, A4, F14, SPO 15, which is the MiG-29s, AG-37s, J-37s, and all sorts of aircraft like this will be able to identify some of the things. Maybe not all, but some of the things. For example, if it's an air-to-air, it's a fighter, so if the AI button appears, like right here, the buttons AI, PD, and everything like that, if AI button appears, it means it's a fighter trying to detect you or lock you. If it's a PD, it's a Post-doppler radar. If it's an AD, it's air defense. If it's a SAM, it's a SAM system, obviously. And AAA, it's obviously AAA. So it can identify the type of target, but not the aircraft itself, the type of system itself. And that's where these ones come. So the F4E, the F-16s, F-14s, B, only the Tornado ADV and the Apaches, they will be able to actually identify what type of target it is. So for example, in here, it's a perfect example. Panzer S1, it's appearing as an S1 on the RWR. The MiG-29 as an M29. So it's not only detecting the type of target, if it's an air defense or air-to-air or whatever, but also the exact type of aircraft, so that you can actually identify what type of system and basically have a bigger picture of it. So yeah, I think this will be added for the Pastel RWR, which is the RWR of the SMT and the Su-39 in the future as well. Apparently they confirmed that, so I don't know yet. It's in the files, but not like properly implemented. Of course, everything is subject to change, but still. So yeah, as I said, everything is subject to change, right? And then the missile launch detection, which is probably one of the main ones that I think are the most important ones. So there will be some differences in RWRs in the detecting of launching missiles. So the launch message will appear over here, meaning that the missile is coming towards you. So some RWRs, for example, these ones from normally the 70s or something like that, will detect, for example, the S-125, the Volna from the destroyer Bravi, right? Of course, it is an S-125. It was being used by the Soviet Union at that time. So these aircraft will be able to detect those launches for the aircraft to basically avoid the missiles. The SPO-15, for example, in the MiG-29s, will can detect illumination for some radar-guided missiles from these aircraft, the Sparrows normally, right? So you can detect a launch from a Sparrow or any missile like that, and also some others like the Phoenix and stuff. So it is a very interesting addition because it will help the MiG-29, for example, be a lot more competitive on the launch parameters of the missiles, right? I don't know, I mean, they don't say it over here, but I'm pretty sure F-16s and others will have that as well. I know, yeah, it's saying right here, the following can detect illumination for radar-guided missiles, in addition to the SAM sites, the Volna, Thor, Tunguska, Roland, and everything like that. So, yeah, it's basically, these ones can only detect the launch of this type of system, the SAM system over here, the S-125. The SPO-15 can detect the normal Sparrows only, or the normal, semi-active missiles. And these ones, the F-4E, F-16A and B, the Tornado, F-14B, right, the Tornado and the Apache, can detect not only the radar missiles like the MiG-29, but also the anti-air systems, especially when they have their radars off. They can actually identify that the command radio guidance systems is being used and actually tell the pilot that the missile is in the air, which is a very interesting thing, guys. Think about it. Why do the Russians don't have this and the Americans have it? Why? Because most of the Russian AA systems can have a certain level of this usage of radio commands, right? So every single AA system since the S-25 in the 50s was basically using a radar guidance to actually know where the target is, or even guide the missile itself, depending on the system. But also, if you wanted to just turn it off the radar and guide by the optic system together with radio commands, so SACLOS and stuff like that, it would also be used, it could also be used like that. So all the Russian systems, all the Soviet systems were used in this way, which means that the Americans always faced this type of AA system, and they actually implemented a system that can actually detect this type of AA systems without even the radar. So it's a counter to the counter, You're turning off your radar on your AA system, and you're trying to guide it stealthily, right? So this was a very dangerous thing in Vietnam, right? So what they do, they just try to implement something that can actually counter this type of launches, since basically all AA systems of the Soviets can actually do that. I mean, I'm not talking about every single one, but you get what I mean, right? So it's a very interesting thing that the Russians never introduced anything like that because they never needed that. They had the Hawk, for example, launch system there because it was a radar guided missile. So for the optic guided systems, the Americans had to get their heads around it and actually make a system that would prevent them to being shot down by a lot of these Soviet systems that could do that. So it's a very interesting subject to even talk about, right? So yeah, but this is it, guys. RWRs are getting way better, getting way more realistic, and yeah, it's arcadey enough and realistic enough for the game. I think it's a very, very interesting thing. Hopefully it's implemented correctly, as they are saying over here, more or less, and the game will be a lot better. And I think it's a pretty good explanation and a very good like hint that we will see better radar missiles in a very short future, you know, obviously, because I mean we need these type of RWRs so that we can actually avoid R-77s, M120s, PL-12s, MICAs, and all sorts of other missiles, right? So yeah, very, very cool. Hopefully you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, and I see you guys on the next one. Bye guys, see ya.